10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
All right, what is up? I'm here with Clint from System Sin. You have done everything under the sun that is badass and cool, and I can't wait to talk to you about it.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
You sound awfully quiet now.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. How
there
about
we
that?
There we go. That's better.
Thanks for having
All
me
right.
on the show.
Yeah, thank you. Tell the viewers who you are and what you're all about.
Well, my name is Clint Carney. I am the singer-songwriter for the band System Sin. I've also, in the past, been live members of the bands Imperative Reaction and God Module. I also work in the film and television industry, doing a number of things from visual effects, props, directing, writing, acting, and I am a questionably fine artist. I show my paintings in galleries all over the world, and yeah, that's it.
Awesome. So, right off the bat, you are putting out a new album fairly soon, right?
That's right. Yeah. I have a new album called Kill the Light, and it is coming out. To be honest, I don't have the specific release date yet because I'm dropping a couple singles along the way first.
Right.
So I just dropped the first single, just came out a week or two ago, called Ashes in the Wind. So it's up on all the streaming services if anyone wants to check it out. There's also a music video on YouTube. So
yeah, the video is really cool.
Thank you. And then next is the single, which is the title track off the album. So it's called Kill the Light. That's coming out next. And then after that, the album will come out, and then probably followed by another sprinkling of additional singles.
Awesome. So how did you develop your sound in the music? I mean, it's like, I don't know, it's like a synth pop, industrial sort of electro fusion thing going on. I dig it though.
Thanks. I mean, that's not really premeditated so much as it's just, I started the band, this project in 1997, believe it or not. So this is 26 years in. And at the time when I started it, I was listening to a lot of that type of music, Leather Strip, Frontline Assembly, Spawn Ranch, Nine Inch Nails, of course, all kinds of, stuff deeply, in that industrial goth genre. And and then that's just kind of evolved over the years into what it is now. I try to do something a little different on every album and on every song, in fact, just to keep it fresh. But that's the sound itself is not premeditated. It's just what came out of me writing music. I mean, probably just pulled from these influences subconsciously or consciously and turned into what it is.
All right. Tell me a story about, a particular song you heard maybe like when you're growing up that had like a huge impact on you.
Let's see. I think the first kind of industrial style music I heard was a local Los Angeles band, which is where I'm from, called Babyland. And I was in, I don't know, 6th or 7th grade. And one of my friends had somehow gotten into one of their shows, and he came to school the next day with a cassette tape. That's how I am. And it was the craziest thing. I'd never heard anything like that. If you're not, anyone who's not familiar with Babyland, I highly recommend you check them out. It's kind of like a fusion of electronic, industrial, and punk rock. Very high energy, super cool. And one of those bands that was just fantastic to see live. Like their live show was such an experience, and unfortunately they're not together anymore. But
Mhm.
I had seen them over 30 times and had the opportunity later on in my career to perform with them as well on stage. So that was cool. So that was probably my first taste into it. But then a couple years later, I started getting into bands like I'd mentioned earlier, Leather Strip was
Yeah.
a big one. Spawn Ranch, Penal Colony, and that I think came from just some friends I had in high school that were listening to that sort of thing, and then I would go out and pick up the latest compilation from Cleopatra Records, which
Mhm.
in the 90s was it had all those bands on them in the States at least, and yeah, and then it kind of bloomed from there.
For sure. Um,
But I'll say,
Mhm.
as far as like influences go, too, I had started writing music pretty early in high school. I got a $5 guitar at a garage sale, and learned what I could from Guitar World magazine, and had some friends teach me stuff
Mhm.
super helpful. And then I got a job and saved up and bought a synthesizer, and that's kind of how that started. But I was always kind of a shy kid and didn't have any aspirations to perform live or do anything
Mhm.
like that. But I had the opportunity to go see a show, which was the lineup was Drill, Kim Lab, and Sister Machine Gun. And I was a huge Kim Lab fan. That was
Mhm.
probably at the time, Kim Lab was probably my favorite band. If you're not familiar with them, for anyone listening, it's a cold wave industrial band. Just really great stuff. And before the show, Jared, the singer for the band, was just hanging out in front of the venue, and
Mhm.
me and my friends went up and talked to him, and he was just so cool and down to earth. And for me, as a high schooler, that was like my rock god,
Mhm.
So I thought that was awesome. And then when I saw them play, my friends and I were up in the front row, and they closed when they closed the set for the night. They held out the mic in front of us, and we got to scream along, and it was just like such a great experience as a kid
Yeah.
to have that. And after that show, I was like, you know what, that's what I want to do. And so thank you, Jared and Kim Lab.
That's awesome. Um, is there one artist that, or a few that you really want to collaborate with? Like what? Go big or go home. What's your like dream collaboration?
That's a good question. I don't know that I have a dream collaboration
Okay.
per se. I mean, I'm open to doing music with anyone. Obviously, I would say um, any of those bands that I grew up listening to I would love to collaborate with. You know, um, there's a newer band out called Morris Black, which is doing
Yes.
some pretty rad stuff, and I'm hoping to work with him on a remix later on in the year if all goes well. He's a good dude, and I love what he's doing.
Me too.
Um,
He's awesome. He's awesome live too.
oh yeah, yeah, I have heard. Yeah, he's great. I was just on another podcast. We were both on at the same time just a week
Mm.
ago, and yeah, just a really great guy who does rad shit.
For sure.
But yeah, I guess to go back to your question, I don't know. A lot of the bands that I listen to nowadays aren't necessarily in the scene, so I don't
Mm.
know what. So it'd be kind of interesting to do a collaboration with someone outside of the industrial goth realm. But I'm open to whatever comes up.
For sure. Um, if you couldn't do what you do, what would your other sort of outlets be?
Well, I do so
I mean,
many.
you do like everything, but
Yeah, I do so many things right now that I have such a wide variety of interests and things
that's
that I'm
true.
fortunate enough to make a living doing, and those all come together. So if I couldn't do any of those, then I guess I would probably go into the tech world, which is kind of where I was before I started doing artistic things
Okay.
for a living, just because it's in my wheelhouse. But I prefer not to have a day job, though.
And well, I wish I didn't have one. So, I was checking out your YouTube channel. I saw like you're making that monster thing, and how'd you get into special effects and all the movie stuff?
Oh yeah, that thanks. Yeah, so for anyone listening, if you check out the System Sin YouTube channel, it's not only System Sin content, but I also do like fun Halloween type projects because, as you might tell from the backdrop here, I'm very into monsters. So yeah, that's been an interest of mine since I was a little kid, and when I was younger, that was like absolutely what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to make monsters, and so I just got into, I read every book I could get my hands on about the process, and I'd always go to the horror conventions and try to meet people and things like that, and I just started at an early age just making stuff for fun. And and so kind of through high school, from grade school through high school, I had all these different interests, and I wasn't really good at any of them because I was just spread myself too thin. So after I graduated, I decided, I'm going to focus on music for a while and kind of let everything else, be
right.
and so I did that for a while, and then once I finally got a record deal in 2004, then I started letting things come back in, and I was just doing a variety. This is a very long story, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
doing a variety of different creative things. One of the things I was doing was tattooing. And as a tattoo artist, I had a client who is now one of my great friends. His name is Skip Crank, and he's a prop master, and does a lot of big film and television stuff. And we just hit it off while I was tattooing him, and he brought me in to do some artwork for Scream 4. Just like a small thing. There's a painting in the background in that movie. It wasn't a big thing. But after that, then he brought me in on the next movie he was working on called We Bought a Zoo. And again, I was just doing artwork and some prop design stuff. And that kind of that was a big movie that I was on set for almost every day. And it had just a huge amount of art department people that I got to meet and work with. And then after that movie, all of those people spread out and they all did different movies, and I kind of got sucked into all these different projects from there. And it just, I didn't, at the time I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to get back into making movies or doing that stuff, but that's kind of the way it went. And I became, on the prop side of things, I ended up doing less monsters, more like, building stuff or designing stuff and, painting, things like that. But it also, rekindled my interest in making monsters and stuff. And a lot of the processes are the same in terms of having to sculpt and make molds and do casts and things like that. So it got me just back doing, fun personal projects. And I love, as far as like YouTube goes and bringing that content to YouTube, I'm addicted to watching tutorial videos. It's just fun for me. So I thought, hey, why not make a few? And that's how I got into doing that.
Nice.
Thanks.
So where did the name System Sin come from? How'd you come up with that?
Well, when I was younger, I had my uncle, his friend, a guy by the name of Mark Paoletti. He had a comic book that he was getting off the ground. It was like a graphic novel, short stories, kind of Tales from the Crypty type thing, where different stories that had different authors on it. And that comic was called System Shock. And I think that put it into my head early on. It's like, oh, that's a cool name. And then so I kind of bastardized that as a teenager and turned it into the System Sin. And the idea was kind of that, this concept of sin, what is right and what is wrong. It's it can be subjective, and I thought, well, what is it that makes one person believe one thing is wrong and another person believe the same thing is right? And is there this internal system within us that controls our tendencies to lean one way or the another in terms of right and wrong? And that was kind of the basic idea that name was born out of, in my, lame teenage brain. That's what it turned into.
All right. Have you had like any really weird interactions with any of your fans?
I mean, sure. But at the same time, I don't want to call anyone out because they may be watching. I'll say this, that I write very personal music. It all comes from a personal place for me. And it's very much a part of me. And I think when you do stuff like that, if you get people who are into what you're doing, they think that they know you in a way that they don't. Because they get that personal side of you, and so it's easy for people to become attached to you as a friend when you don't know them, because they get this very personal stuff about you. So I'll just say I get a lot of oversharing emails from people, which I'm very grateful that there are people out there that like my music and that can connect with it. And on some level, some people have told me that it's helped them process things or get through things in their life. And to that, for that, I'm extremely grateful for. So any weirdness that comes out from that sort of thing, it's fine. And that's just a byproduct, I think, of putting yourself out there as a musician. So,
Yeah. So you also write and direct movies too, right?
Yeah, I do. I direct a lot of music videos. I have not directed a feature film yet, but I did produce and write one called Dry Blood that I also starred in, and that System Sen does the soundtrack for. So that's out. You can see that online now. It's like a ghost film, kind of super violent and fucked up. So fair warning, if you watch it, it is a slow burn, but if you hang in there for the third act, you won't regret it, unless you're very squeamish and do not like gore. Then you might want to not hang in for the third act. I don't want to spoil it beyond that.
Yeah.
But I do a lot of directing for music videos and things like that. I've directed for a number of different bands in the scene too. Done a couple of Aesthetic Perfection music videos. Anyway, again, on my YouTube channel, there's also a playlist there of like music videos I've directed. So if anyone's curious, you can go and just go through and see all the random stuff.
All right. Have you brought System Sen like out on the road yet?
Oh yeah. I've played hundreds of shows over the years. Many shows. U.S., Canada, Europe. I've slowed down on the touring in as I got older.
Right.
It's being on the road for 6 months out of the year lost its appeal. 15 years ago. But I still go out. I usually do a handful of shows every year. I was just out in Salem, Massachusetts and New York City earlier this year. And then coming up next week, in fact, on July 21st, we're playing the Coffin Club in Portland, Oregon. And then on July 22nd, we're playing Funhouse in Seattle, Washington. So anyone listening who is in Seattle or Portland, come on out.
Well, that's cool.
Thanks. Three of my band members, the three band members that aren't me are in another band together, and that band's called Alice, which is a really cool band. And they are on the road. They're in the middle of touring right now. And so I'm actually just those two dates that I just mentioned, I'm jumping onto their tour for those two. But if anyone, I highly recommend checking them out. It's Alice, and the I in Alice is the number 1. So check them out.
All right. So when you're out on the road, what's your favorite go-to snack?
Go-to snack. Oh, I don't eat very healthy, I guess, when I'm on the road. I'll say this though, my band members eat much more healthy than I do. So they have inspired me to eat a little better, I guess. But if left to my own devices, I'm just like a goat, I'll eat anything that's put in front of my face. So.
All right. If you were a salad, what dressing would it have?
Wow, where do these questions come from, Eric? I don't know. Well, I'll tell you, I like ranch. I don't know if that would make me ranch. But that's usually what I put on salad. Probably the least healthiest of the salad dressings.
I think Caesar is worse than ranch.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I'll mix them together then, and that's me.
That sounds really good, actually. All right. Are you, other than your new album that you're working on, are you working on anything else new upcoming?
Well, I'm working on so the music video I just mentioned for Ashes in the Wind, that just came out, and I'm in the middle of working on a music video for the next song too, which is my music videos tend to have a lot of post-production and lots of animation and things like that. So I'm deep in the woods on that. And then just some other gigs, here and there. The movie industry slowed down quite a bit with the writer strike and now the SAG strike going on.
Right.
So, but I do have a few projects lingering. I'm doing some, visual effects on other music videos and a feature film coming up and things like that. But nothing I can talk about yet. And then beyond that, I'm actually just kind of for fun and maybe a future endeavor, getting into learning video game development, specifically in VR, because I don't know, I got the Oculus. I'm all about that. So I think there's a big future in doing that, and I think that would just be a fun thing to do. So I'm in the middle of learning Unreal Engine right now, which also has some uses in the visual effects world. So
neat. If you had to pick one, who is your favorite like classic Universal horror monster?
Creature from the Black Lagoon. I think I just love the design is amazing. I have you probably can't see it from here, but there's a creature right over there, just off camera. You'll have to trust me. I know it's hard to believe in this room that there might be a creature from the Black Lagoon, but there is. But I enjoy a lot of the old stuff. But yeah, I just, even as a kid, I just always loved the design of it. Yeah, the monster.
Is there a reason why you have a deer head behind you and amongst all the spooky stuff?
Oh yeah, that's so in the movie, if anyone watches the movie Dry Blood, there is a scene where again, I don't want to spoil it, but let's just say there is a person that has the head of a deer in that movie, and initially the idea was that we were going to create a puppet of it, and so I found that guy on eBay so he could live again in a film, but he didn't show up until 2 weeks after we finished filming the movie, so we had to do that scene a different way. So it ended in the final movie. What it ended up being, instead of having a puppet deer, I had to take footage of a real deer and composite it in post-production onto the actor, and that's how it worked. But that was initially supposed to be the deer from Dry Blood. And I like weird, I collect a lot of weird things. I mean, see, I'm blocking it, but there's a whole cabinet full of human skulls behind me.
Cool.
and I have a lot of animal skulls and things like that in throughout the house. So it fits in with the aesthetic of my place. Also, I don't believe in hunting or anything like that. I would never do that myself, but it's a way, I guess, to honor it. It's already been dead, and it's better than throwing it out. It can live on in my weirdo place. Whether or not the deer would approve of that, I don't know.
I think the deer might be scared.
He gets along with everyone.
All right. I read in your bio that you even did some work for like a Wes Craven film.
Yeah, that was the Scream 4.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Right.
Yeah, a funny or an interesting story about that, though. I didn't meet Wes at the time on there because I wasn't on set for it. I just delivered the painting, but apparently he had my painting hanging up in his production office all through shooting that film.
Oh,
And
wow.
then a few years later, I was part of an art show, which was like a tribute to his films over at a place called Hyena Gallery in Burbank. And I did a painting of Freddy for that from part 1. And Wes showed up to the show, and I got to meet him then, and we talked, and he bought my Freddy painting,
Awesome.
which was rad. And so that was hanging in his house for I guess up until he passed. So but yeah,
Really
he was
cool.
a super rad guy and a big idol of mine, as a kid. And it was just a cool experience overall.
For sure. Is there any like, how do I word what I was trying to say? Who's like probably the coolest person that from the horror film industry that you've met? Like,
yeah, it's hard to say the coolest. I've just met so many great people over the years, and I've had just the privilege of getting to work with so many people whose work I've admired, throughout my life. And yeah, I mean, again, it was definitely cool meeting Wes. I didn't meet him in a working with him capacity then, but I guess a few years ago, I got to just do a little bit of shop work for Alec Gillis at Studio ADI on the last Predator movie.
Oh, neat.
And well, actually, I had met him maybe a couple months before because I was doing visual effects on a film that he had produced. And he is just super, really nice dude. And got to he went into his shop, and he showed me around, and that was a really cool experience. I've been going to horror conventions since I was a little kid too, so just as like a fan, I've got to meet a ton of horror actors just as a kid. And I always remember that too, like the people that were really cool with me as a kid, going to see them, that always stuck with me. I remember Jeffrey Combs. He's from the Reanimator movies, for those of you who don't know. He was particularly super cool. I was walking around the floor. This was the Fangoria Weekend of Horrors, which was a convention that no longer exists, but it was, Fangoria had their own convention. And I was looking at like a model of him from the Reanimator. And then I turned around and he was right there, and he just started talking to me, and we talked. I don't know what we said, because I was just, as a kid, I was starstruck, and but I remember him just being super nice, and we had a cool little brief conversation. And so that always stuck with me. But now when I meet people, I tend to be meeting them more on like a peer level, which is different. So it's still really cool. But I think I tend to, when you meet someone as a fan, or when you're not on a similar standing as them, and they're still really cool with you, I think that's the real testament of how they are as a person, as opposed to meeting someone who already thinks you're cool, or whatever.
Exactly. Like I met Bill Moseley, and it was amazing. He was so nice. Then I met Malcolm McDowell, and he's kind of a douche. He was like, just trashing on the film I said I loved, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I met Bill Moseley before too. I was he was hanging out backstage at a God Module was playing a show with Combi Christ and in LA, and Bill Moseley was there hanging out with those guys, and I got to meet him, and just super nice.
That's cool.
Yeah, super nice, really chill dude. So that was cool. Yeah, Bill Moseley, he rules.
He does. So you said you did tattoo artist. You were a tattoo artist for a while?
Yeah, briefly. My buddy Trevor Friedrich, who was drumming for Imperative Reaction for a long time, and he does like all my tattoo work. When we would be on the road, he would always bring his tattoo gear with him, and he would tattoo people in different cities. And it was like, it just struck me as like, oh, that's an ingenious way to, keep yourself occupied and simultaneously make more money while touring. And he kind of showed me the ropes with that, and I did that for a while. But eventually I just had to, I liked doing it. I enjoyed it, but I had so many other interests that I was more into that I kind of had to put that aside and just focus on the stuff that I was, really into.
That's pretty cool though.
Yeah, it was certainly fun. Yeah, we met a lot of people. The interesting thing about tattooing people is it's a very intimate process. Like you're right up in someone's face for a couple hours, just having a conversation with them. It's like you have conversations with people that you wouldn't have normally.
Right.
You really get to know people when doing it, and that was one of the cool things about it. I think is just even in tattooing friends, and you just have these lengthy conversations. You're forced into these conversations
Right.
because it's just you and them in the room working, and it's pretty cool just to get to know people on that level. So that was a cool byproduct of tattooing.
Was there anything else we haven't touched on yet that you really wanted to talk about?
No, just to I guess rehash the new album Kill the Light is coming out later this year. And the single Ashes in the Wind is available on all streaming platforms. And if you go to systemsend.com, you'll find the links to all my social media there, as well as merchandising, CDs, t-shirts, all that jazz. And that all helps keep us afloat.
All right.
Oh, and ticket links are also on systemsend.com for the Portland and Seattle shows coming up.
All right. And is there anything that you would like to say to your fans who will watch us?
Well, thanks for listening and supporting what I do. I couldn't do it without you guys. So thank you very much.
For sure. All right. Thank you so much. This was fun.
Yeah. Thanks, Jack. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right.
All right. Take care.
Later.
Drop the bass.